Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's EdLeaders Network live event, Bringing Out Your Best Each Day with our presenter, Rachel Fisher. My name is Arlen Peebles with the Illinois Principals Association, and I will be your host for today. Some things I want to bring your attention to. Thank you so much for joining us in our first ELN live event of the 16-17 school year. Very excited to get this kicked off again this year. We are using GoToWebinar to bring this to you. And I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with everything in the control panel. First and most importantly is your audio. Many of you joining us with your computer speakers, that is great, best way to go. But if you do have any audio difficulties, you can switch over to a phone call and get a teleconference line to join us by phone as well. There is also a questions panel in the control panel, and if you open that up, if you have any questions for us today, if they're for me, for technical reasons, or of course for Rachel about the presentation, type them in as you think of them, and we will take time towards the end to address any questions that come in to us. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I would now like to turn things over to Rachel Fisher. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. A pleasure to be with you all today, and thank you again to Illinois Principals Association. It's a delight to be with you today. And as we're looking at this beautiful sunrise over the lovely coastal scene, we are here today to embark on a new journey about truly bringing out our best each and every day, and how to bring out not only our best, but our team's best. You have an outstanding team with you of teachers and administrators, even parents as well, and your students. And today we want to talk about some resources and some tools that you can use to enhance those relationships and make them even stronger as we go forward. Because as we think about what great partnerships, great schools look like, we know the most important asset absolutely is, pause for you to think, yes, the people, without a doubt. You and your team are the true difference. So let's talk some today about helping engage everyone to bring out their best. I wanted to give you a quick greeting from myself here and introduce myself. That's me right there. I promise it's not a photoshopped image. It is me. So again, as Arlen said, I am Rachel Fisher, and I'm with Lively, where we work on motivational leadership and management. I've worked in higher education for a number of years and actually had a number of K through 12 partners. So it's been a pleasure today to speak to really the difference makers in our communities, and that is certainly you. I have worked in management in a variety of industries and fields for over the past 15 years. My master's degree is actually in corporate communication with a real focus on motivating employees. I did my thesis research on how to motivate part-time employees and look at some of the different factors that influence that. And regardless of the field that I have been in, it has been incredibly clear to me that when a team is empowered, higher goals and stronger effects and effects occur. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is really creating that lively presence and engaging everyone on the team. So with that, of course, why not? It's a Friday morning. I'm sure you have nothing else going on. Ha ha. So why not start with a quick culture quiz to get us thinking? And again, my ultimate goal for today is to give you some interesting facts as well as some practices you can take back to your team and start implementing right away. So with that, here's our little quiz for you to ponder. Of the first 23 astronauts, 21 were this. Over 50% of all U.S. presidents have been this. And 2/3 of all entrepreneurs are this. What is this? I've done this portion of a presentation at a number of places throughout the country, and typically some responses become men. Well, yes, there are a number of men, but that's not the case. Last week, a gentleman told me, I know, they're tall. Tall is a relative thing, I say as a 5'2" person, 5'4" in heels, thank you. So it's not tall. And yes, a lot of them are Americans, but that's not it. Of the first 23 astronauts, 21 were firstborn. Over 50% of all U.S. presidents have been firstborn, and 2/3 of all entrepreneurs are, yes, firstborn. In 2007, a survey of corporate leaders found that over 40% of CEOs were firstborn. So what's the difference? Why is firstborn make such an incredible impact when we talk about leadership and change makers? Well, let me introduce you to someone. See that charming, wonderful, precocious young girl? Yes, you guessed it, it's me, and I'm one of the proud firstborn. And then there's this other guy. I don't know, it's one of my two brothers. You'd have to like flip a coin to guess. Who knows, right? But that's really what it comes down to, is the difference between firstborn and others is how much emphasis and enthusiasm is sometimes placed. As a firstborn, and those that you that are listening that are as well, I'm sure can relate. My family has books of photos of me as a child. You could almost do a flip book that would go from infancy to toddler to middle school to high school. It's amazing. And then for my brothers, there's a few. There's one of them when they're born, and one, I don't know, when they started school, and then it gets a little hazy. You know, they kind of looked the same. So, again, you have to say the carpet, look at the hair, look at the PJs to try to figure out who is who in those pieces. But what's remarkable about this is only 35% of the general population is a firstborn or only child. And yet, they comprise so much of our leadership roles. So what's the difference between my life as a flip book child with so many pictures or flip a coin for one of the brothers? It makes a difference in the firstborn experience. What we're given, what we're encouraged, what goals are set for us. And that's today what we're really going to talk about, is that's what the business that we're in. Yes, we're in education, but ultimately we're in the business of empowering everyone to feel like a firstborn. That everyone should have a picture of themselves on their wall because they are the firstborn, as opposed to second or third, yada, yada. So with that, we want to look at what's the major difference in how we treat our staff to make sure they all feel like firstborns. And what's really fascinating, what really we'll spend the majority of time today talking about, is after all the research done on what's the difference between first and others, it comes down to three key things. And this again will be our focus for today: expectations, responsibility, and feedback. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the game changers that propel someone out of a second and third child feeling of, it's one of those kids, to the firstborn outstanding leader opportunity of he or she is going to change the world. So take a moment, think about your workplace. Consider the amount of expectation, responsibility, and feedback that you give to each person and each encounter. Are there differences in these relationships? Absolutely. Think of your expectations, responsibility, and feedback you give to someone who's checking you out at the grocery store. You probably give some feedback. Thank you, have a nice day. You might smile. Your expectation is to greet them friendly. But it's a really limited relationship. So therefore, it's a very limited experience that we get out of it. But to really empower people, to make everyone find their value, and therefore want to give value to others and have great enthusiasm, again, expectations, responsibility, and feedback. So ladies and gentlemen, let's spend this morning taking a few minutes out of our schedule, and let's really focus on how we bring out the best by using these three key principles and really diving in more. So let's talk about who is awesome today. It's you. And right there, you've been witness to a positive expectation. Because my belief is that you can succeed. And that's the mission of positive expectations. You must believe it. And it's not enough just to say it. You need to make sure that when you give a positive expectation to someone, that they understand it. And here's the really tough one: accept it. It's Friday morning, you're running in, you have to do this webinar because you signed up and you want to do it. You've got your cup of coffee in one hand, you're flying through the door, you see your secretary, you say, "Good morning, you're doing great." Run into your office, slam the door, turn on the lights. Do you really believe that the receptionist and your front desk team truly finds that you're giving them a positive expectation? Are you doing it in a way that they truly can understand and accept? Or is it just the fly-by thank you? Flyby thank yous are lovely, but that's just what they are. They're flyby. They're not something that will stay and sustain and help someone grow. And when we're talking about helping someone grow, if we give a positive expectation, you must make sure that when you say it, you believe it. Because we know authenticity, right? It's an incredible human ability that we can read fake. And we just know it. And in studies that are done about helping people analyze when they realize that someone is ingenuine or disgenuine when they're speaking, one of the fascinating things we find is that it's hard for people to say what it is. It's a gut feeling. I just knew. So we want to make sure that when you say something, you believe it. So if you can't turn to the third grade teacher and say, you're the best third grade teacher I've ever worked with, then don't say it. Because a lack of authenticity will cause a failure in the partnership, a failure in the commitment. You must be truthful in your enthusiasm and your positive expectations. I can tell you really care about working with children. I can tell you care about the experience your students have in your classroom. Believe it, say it, and they will hear it and connect with it as well. And what we're doing when we talk about positive expectations is not only enough just to say, you're awesome, but to set then expectations of what we're hoping will happen for people. And we certainly know that there can be a great effect with expectations. Now, when you're looking at your screen, you're looking at the census card reading machine from the turn of the century in the early 1900s. The U.S. Constitution requires that a census is completed in every decade. And when 1890 came around for the census, there was over 63 million people living in the United States. And a lot of folks said, you know what, they won't have time to tabulate all those results until the next census comes. It's too much work. So what they did in 1890 was they had this machine, because back in the start of the census, you actually would get a punch card that would come to your home, and you would actually punch out the holes to mark how many children lived there, what was the occupation of everyone. And then they'd be turned in and mailed back to Washington, D.C., where they would use this census tabulating machine to process. And again, we're talking about in 1890, 63 million people. That's a lot of punch data you're going to have to go through. So at the time, there was a gentleman in charge of it. He was in charge of all the employees that ran through the machine. And he said, we anticipate that you should be able to do 7,000 cards a day. Go get them. And sure enough, each employee did just about 7,000 cards. Some could do 7,500 cards, but actually would complain about how tough it was and how incredibly tired they were. 10 years later, the census comes again in 1900. A new person is hired to oversee the employees. They don't have data from the past, so they just start off and say, how many punch cards should we do? The manager shrugged and said, you know what, let's just see how many we can do. We have a great team. Let's see what happens. Do you know how many cards these people did? Over 14,000 cards, more than doubled. And what's the difference? It's the same machine. It's roughly the same people, right? It's a new manager, but it's the same technique. The difference is the expectation. Because, ladies and gentlemen, people work to meet expectations. That's what we do. We meet them. So if I tell you my goal is that you correspond with 4 people a day, I can almost guarantee you'll correspond with 4 people a day. You meet expectations. So that's where we have to be thinking about what expectations are we putting out into the space, because words have a profound impact. Now, a more modern day impact would be this, your cell phone. Right now, your cell phone rings, you look down and you see the name of someone. You have an internal grug and shrug as you debate on, oh, should I answer it? Because you have the expectation that that person is always massive, massive drama, right? The person that calls you with, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got you. I'm having such a hard decision. Should I have coconut milk or almond milk? Goodness sakes, every moment is drama. It just can't be a normal day with that person. Here's the catch. You've set that expectation of that individual. And while they may have proven that to be accurate, they will always meet your expectation. I have a friend that I feel very much this about. This is somewhat cathartic to share. The other day, I saw her name come up on the phone, and I thought, oh, okay. Answered the phone. She said, hey, just wanted to call and see how you were. The call lasted only 2 minutes. She really just asked me how I was, and then she hung up the phone. Immediately, I start thinking, oh, what is she not telling me? Oh, goodness, what is she waiting to tell me later? Because the catch is, I've set the expectation. I've set the expectation that she's full of drama and full of herself, and she'll never want to know about anything else. So we have to think about what expectation we're setting out. So as we do that, we need to think about the way that we present ourselves as we set forth these expectations. And that brings us to talking about eye contact, tonality, and body language. There's been amazing studies done that for individuals that make eye contact, they're absolutely viewed as more positive, caring, trustworthy, dedicated. Individuals that don't make eye contact are seen as shifty, uncaring, disloyal. What a tremendous impact. And we're talking about something so simple, eye contact. And for those of us that find it challenging to make eye contact, because it can certainly be, I've heard adages and have used them with my own staff about just try to make eye contact, look at someone's earlobe, or look right in between their eyebrows. Then you release yourself from the pressure of feeling like you have to make intense eye contact, but you're still looking in their direction, acknowledging. Because that's really what eye contact comes down to, is an acknowledgement of each other. I see you. I want to interact with you. Taking that moment to do that. One of the fascinating things is to look at all the pieces that affect how we view an expectation of someone or how we are perceived. If you think that when we look at someone and we interact, we have 100% of high function happening. 100% of us is using the ability to decide what we think of this person, what we anticipate our relationship being, and what we view them as a person. And it comes down to 3 key factors. And in a book called The Relationship Cure, there was a great studies done by a wonderful Dr. Gottman who focused on how much of that 100% is made up of tonality, how much is made up of facial expressions and body language, and how much is the actual words. So think, 100% functioning. What points are all of those? How much of our 100% are we influenced by, 100% influenced by tone, by facial and body language, and by words? As someone who values education tremendously, I often, when I first started looking at this day, thought, well, it has to be about language. Language is so powerful and such a vivid experience. The actual words I'm using right now for you to decide what you view of me and what your expectations are comes in at merely 7%. 7. It's actually not about the words you use. 38% focuses on voice and tonality. If my voice rises and drops, if it's engaging to listen to, or if it's all flat and monotone. 38%. The remaining 55% is on facial expressions and body language. So as we zip by our front office in the morning, what is our facial language, facial expressions and body language doing? Over half of what someone views comes directly from expressions and body language. So when you say, I'm so glad to have you all here today, you have nice tone, you have nice words you're using, but you're sitting at your desk with your arms crossed and you're hunched over, what message are you really sending? So it's something to be incredibly aware of. In 1970, UC San Francisco did an amazing study and looked at across different cultures, could people still read the same type of facial expression? Again, over half of what our expectations come from is facial expressions and body language. We have to wonder about the cultural aspect. And it was fascinating to see that regardless of the culture, people were still able to reflect and name facial presentations of happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise. They're all universally recognized. And while we can certainly appreciate that some people are better at reading facial cues, all of us have a general instinct to be aware of it. And that's a piece for us to be very mindful of as we do and create and continue our expectations. Moving ahead, you rock, you rule. Oh yes, our expectations for our staff have to be based in reality. and a positive expectation. A high expectation is, you're amazing, everything is super. Very general, non-specific. But a positive expectation is something similar to, I know you can do this. I see you working really hard at this. You can accomplish this. Just by putting some identifiers into the sentence, you really help people engage on a whole nother level, and their expectations and ownership drastically increase. Now, to create these positive expectations, to create this positive work environment, we really need to talk about setting goals. Having realistic goals that are both short-term and long-term. Give me something to shoot for. If we can focus on a goal, it helps drive us and connect us. So as we talk about goals and different settings with that, I bring you to this. What is the number one requirement for getting things done? Thing you have to do is make a list? Yes. I once went somewhere and they said the number one thing you have to do is get a pen. But the truly number one requirement for getting things done is
Sorry about that, everybody. It looks like Rachel is cutting out on us a little bit. Rachel, can you hear me? If you can hear me, just give me a quick shout in the questions box. Maybe it's just on my end. Okay, thanks, Carol. Looks like you guys can hear me, but we lost Rachel, which I'm such a cliffhanger. I wanted to know what is the number one thing for getting things done. So let me see if we can pick Rachel up. I may have to have her switch to the phone. Let me type to her. Let's see if she's still here. Yes, she's there. Yep, she has definitely lost audio. Let's see, she's trying to reconnect here. Sorry about the interruption, everybody. Just give us a few minutes and we will get Rachel back online. Rachel, not sure if you can hear us, but we've lost your audio and we'll need you to dial in on the phone.
And that
Yes, Rachel, you are back. Can you hear us?
and we move into again a discussion about not assigning blame, avoiding it. It's so easy to say, who helped with this? Why didn't it work? But that
Rachel,
won't, yes.
are you able to hear us? We lost you about 2 minutes ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, could I have you switch over? Could I have you switch over to the phone under the audio control panel so that doesn't happen again?
Absolutely. Let's see. If you can just point me in the right direction to do that. I'm sorry, everybody. Let's
Yeah,
see.
open up the control panel, open up the
Yeah.
audio portion,
And
and
hit
you'll
telephone.
hit phone call, and then there'll be a number to dial. All right, thank you for your patience, everybody, as we get Rachel switched over to the phone. That way we can make sure we don't lose her again.
Absolutely. Just give me one moment to dial in. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and we'll go back to slide 11, the number one requirement for getting things done.
Wonderful. Perfect. 3, 2, 2. Beautiful. Just give me one moment as we dial in here. And we'll get all set. Well, how interesting. The number one thing is someone must do it. And that's clearly what we're doing now. So thank you, everyone, as we're going to bring out the best in our technology. Thanks for sticking with us. It must be a Friday. Let's see. Let's see how we did. Yes. Oh, I'm having to be smart, folks. Okay. Now can everyone hear me?
We can, and I had to mute you on the line there.
I appreciate goodness. I need as much help as possible. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to make you presenter again so you can share your screen.
Perfect.
Make sure you're muted on the GoToWebinar control panel.
I don't know where that noise is coming from.
Oh, turn your speakers off. And can you turn your computer speakers down?
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
Goodness sakes, folks.
Oh, looks like it's still there. Are you still there?
Yes.
In the audio
Okay, folks,
panel,
let's try it this way. Can everyone hear me now?
yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and do it this way. Thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll go back to you, and you can take us back to right after, what you left us on a cliffhanger, the number one thing for getting things done.
Very good. Well, after all that, I'm sure you're dying to know that the number one way to get things done is someone has to do it. Yes, that becomes the key for us. So with that in mind, we have to think that that's so easy to miss at times. And so we want to ensure that we hold on to that and make sure that we actually assign someone to do the responsibilities. And it's so easy that at times we overlook it. The idea that when we talk about that, it's everyone's responsibility to refill the paper in the copier. How many times have you gone to print and there's no paper? Ah, yes, because everyone becomes no one, because we always assume that someone else is going to do it. So with that in mind, we have to make sure that we're always giving specific accountability to individuals that will empower us, as well as ensure that everything truly does get done. And as we do that, there we go, we're going to talk about the 4 steps to guide that responsibility to really make that impact. And that first piece is absolutely establishing the accountability, making a positive opportunity for everyone to engage and everyone to have an impact in it. So our first step in guiding responsibility is to establish that accountability. You're going to be in charge of. You have the opportunity to ensure that the copier is always filled. You are our paper guru. What we don't want to do is assign blame. If that copier isn't full, I'm going to look at you. Because all that does is create a negative space. So a positive way to engage in responsibility is creating that accountability. We want to make sure in our second step that we set goals that are understood by everyone. So with that piece, we talk about using our big dry erase boards or our flip chart sheets and really letting everyone know, here are the macro goals for us as a school and a district for this upcoming year, but also bring it down to the micro side and say, here is each particular person's ownership of that major goals. So we set those goals, and by sharing them in a large group, we not only create more accountability, but we also give a way to support each other and to acknowledge that each of us is essential in reaching these goals. Step 3, as always, is to develop action plans. Oh, I can feel the inward groan. We say action plans so often. And the key with it, and this is the way I'd like to help you reframe it, is it's not an action plan. It's how are we going to reach that goal? What are the steps? And I sometimes try to write every single step possible, even the really minute details, because those will help us celebrate our success as we make it toward the path of reaching that goal. And our fourth step, which really initiates the success in the responsibility, is to engage. And the more people we can include in this process, the higher the accountability. So when it comes to our monthly team meetings and we go over how are things going, pull out that goal sheet. And even if some goals are not necessary yet to be discussed or it's not timely yet for them, still mention them. If even just to say, okay, the summer reading program we don't have to worry about yet because we're just at the start of fall. Perfect. But by continuing to speak of them, we help encourage a continuing responsibility and ownership with that process. So as we move through this, I again have to stress, we have to avoid assigning the blame. We need to reward brainstorming, seek to better understand, and create more successful systems. Group discussions will fail if we end up focusing on personal attacks. Well, you should have. Why didn't he? It wasn't my responsibility. We need to own it as a group and move forward in that process. So with that, there are 4 questions that I've used in the past to really help my team avoid that blame and really take prideful ownership as we move forward in the accountability piece. So for me, there are those 4 key questions. What was supposed to happen? What was supposed to happen? The second question, what actually happened? Let's just be really transparent. Let's be honest and own it, but own it as a team. The blame and saying, group, let's together try to think how we could improve this.
Rachel, looks
Third
like
question.
Can you hear me, Rachel? Rachel, can you hear me?
The third question.
All right, looks like we might be losing Rachel again. We'll see if
What can we learn from this as we look at the differences in
Rachel, can you hear me? All right, sorry about this. Looks like we lost Rachel again. I am really going to try to get her to call in on the phone this time. So Rachel, if you can hear me, and I'm not sure that you can, we'll need you to open the audio panel and click on phone call. There you are. Rachel?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I guess we were just talking about such impactful thing that, my goodness, our whole internet system can't even handle it.
It's
Goodness.
true.
Thank you all again for your patience.
Hey, Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So in the control panel, I need you to open up
Okay.
audio.
So again, our four... Okay, Arlen, can you hear me?
Yeah, so open up audio and click on the phone call button, and that'll cut your mic, but you'll dial the number that'll be seen there.
Okay.
All right, we'll get Rachel on the phone, and then we'll have a consistent audio connection with her. Again, my apologies for the technical issues. We didn't have these during rehearsal.
Okay,
There we go. That sounds great.
great. Thank you, everyone. Well, for heaven's sake, bringing out the best is clearly not a technology opportunity for me.
All right, you're
Goodness. Well,
sounding good now, so we'll take it back.
Great.
Yes, we will take it back right, not from the beginning, of course. Four key questions to ask. We lost you right at the top of the first question.
My goodness. Okay, well, here we go, folks. We'll do this kind of quick so we can move on, because I bet you're tired of hearing me say this. So, the four questions we want to ask in developing that group accountability, avoiding that blame, is going to come down to what was supposed to happen,
Rachel, looks like you might have muted yourself. There you go.
okay. Oh my goodness, already. Okay, so our four key questions are what was supposed to happen, what actually happened, what accounts for any difference, and what can be learned. So with those four pieces, those are the group questions that I ask my team whenever we're looking at when we have a challenge. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we have fantastic people with us. We have fantastic vision and goals, but things will happen. So as we work through it, if we can own it as a team and accountability and avoid putting blame on a particular person and pushing people to feel like, well, you did this or you didn't do this, I had nothing to do, that causes a real challenge. So if we can, as a team, say, what was supposed to happen, what actually happened, we are supposed to have a great event at our book reading night. What actually happened is no one came. What accounts for any difference? And finally, what can be learned? We learned that we need to promote it much earlier. We need to look at the city's calendar to see what other events are taking place. Whatever those pieces might be. But being really open and transparent shows that we're all in this together. We're all sitting at this circle table together, figuring out what's the best way to do it. That's the first part of our dealing with responsibility and accountability. And the other aspect of responsibility is making sure that you give it to others. Help me have ownership by giving me some opportunities. Now, the key is, though, to bring out the best means preparing people to tackle challenges with their best. So I often try to think of it as a scale on how much can one person take at a time. As we give responsibility and we give new accountability, people get more and more luggage that they're going to take with them on this trip to bringing out their best and being the best employee they can be for you and the school and the district. But the catch is, if we just have one bag, it's not too bad. It's a nice, cute carry-on. We can carry it, no problem. But very quickly, we start to realize that we become overwhelmed. My gosh, suddenly I have to get a little vehicle and 2 carts to pull everything. And I went from just a carry-on to this. We have to think that we can lead people in bit by bit to this process. And that's incredibly important, is to think about the scale of stress that people can take. Are you with me, Arlen?
Yes, we are here. You're sounding good.
Great. Just want to make sure. Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate that.
So as we load up our cart and we go, the key is that we can incrementally place more and more bags on. See how organized and nice they look? That's fine. But we have all been those people, right? That we look at our own luggage cart for our responsibilities and things are hanging off the side. We've crammed them in. We're holding things in our hands. That is going to overstress our system. I would try to think about if every responsibility is a number 1, number 2, number 3, I can't go from number 1 to number 10. I have to work my way into that. And part of how we do that is dealing with goals. And following the goals becomes incredibly key.
Everything okay there?
I think so. As long as you can hear me, that's perfect.
Okay.
Good. Just checking. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we'll be all set now that we're on the phone.
Pardon?
I just said you'll be all set now that you're on the phone.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I apologize. So when we're looking at these goals, we got to make sure that we ease people into that luggage cart, that we slowly add opportunities and different things on. Because what we ultimately want is we want to have a breakthrough. We want to be that impact, that difference maker, and we absolutely can do that. And we need to be challenged and feel that what we do is an accomplishment, and we need support to push through. And here is a big, big key that I want to hold on for you. Often people fail to perform as well as they could because they don't know what's expected. I didn't realize that was my job. I didn't understand that was what I needed to do. So think about how we communicate every little nuance. With some of my teams, I like to sit down and do a job description and just say, write down for me your job description. And then I compare it to what I wrote. Because what you'll find is people will write about what they think is the most important. Sometimes we're on the same page. Other times we view things differently. And walking through that together helps us have those breakthroughs and see the light on the other side of the great hard work that we're doing. Because here's the key. How can you be an effective leader if the people you're leading don't know what they're accountable for? If I don't know, I can't do better. Do you communicate it to me? That becomes incredibly important. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about expectations, we've talked about responsibility, and now we get into the feedback, a really absolutely critical piece. And yet, hold your breath, close your eyes, and attempt to speak the truth in a diplomatic, yet supportive, and yet motivating, but firm way. Oh, feedback can be exhausting. And yet, in many ways, ladies and gentlemen, it probably is the most crucial of all three elements. Expectations help with job satisfaction, responsibility empowers an employee, and feedback is the finish line. The ability to give useful and effective feedback can often be the reason employees stay. Feedback is the critical piece that lets employees and employers know the value of each other. So when we talk about feedback, we have three key ways that we're going to talk about it. It needs to be motivational. It needs to be informational. And it needs to be developmental. And when we talk about these three aspects of it, the first one we absolutely focus on is that effective feedback is being motivational. You owe it to your team, that team that comes in every day and every day works to say something. And I know that that's hard because we all assume that no news is good news, but it's actually quite the opposite. If you don't hear how you're doing, you will start to fail. And I know it's a tough thing because we're all very busy and there's so many things going on. But we've got to realize that very few people wake up in the day, yawn and stretch, have a cup of coffee and say, I think I want to ruin someone's day. Everyone is trying to do good. And when we have to do in that feedback, is be motivational and let people see that we see that they're trying, that they're working towards it. Too often what we do is we do something called extinction. We just don't speak about it. We just don't say, because, I'll let you know if you're doing something wrong. Otherwise, just know you're doing great. That's really hard. Because over time, I'm going to need someone to tell me that I'm still doing something good. So making sure we give that piece. A Huffington Post article in 2013 talked about that 80% of employees say they're motivated to work harder when their boss shows appreciation. And that's the piece that we're talking about. How do we connect back in and say, I see you, and I see that you're working? And that's the piece that we want to be able to do this. It's easy enough to think about just changing some of the basic pieces of our culture. Have you set up a culture about how you deal with email? If I send you an FYI email, is the culture understanding that you'll respond with a thanks? Or is it that we know that you filed it and you're keeping it, but I know you've received it? What messages are you sending out about that piece? And if you think about it, you interviewed, or your district did, so you know why each person was chosen. But we need to sometimes take the leap, jump out of our own bowl, and ask them, why did they choose us? And I don't mean during the interview process, because everyone will say just about the same thing. But I mean when they're in there, doing the great work, saying, what about this job makes you come in every day? Understanding a person's motivation helps us understand how to give them feedback and how to engage them. And perhaps one of the trickiest pieces of this is recognizing that your motivation isn't their motivation. We need to be all right and comfortable with people are motivated for different reasons. And we need to embrace whatever reason they might have. I'm here for the money. Okay. I know that now, and now I know how to approach you when we talk about expectations, responsibility, and giving you positive motivation and feedback. It's okay. For whatever reason people are here is the fact that they're here. So we know we've already got them. How do we get to keep them? And one of the most essential pieces is the feedback. So once we know what motivates or what is of value to an employee, let's use it to help our team become the most effective and really bring out their best. Too often, we don't provide enough feedback to our superstars. Again, we just assume, they're fine, they're always happy, they're always working hard. And that's what causes extinction, where cares wither away, and then job seeking comes absolutely next. And that's the piece that we want to avoid for sure happening. So we want to give feedback. If you want improvement, you have to reinforce the improvement. And the number one reason why people quit a job, it's not because of money. It's a lack of value. I didn't think they cared. That's the number one reason. So when people tell you money, it might be money, but there's a larger reason. And a lot of it comes back to the kind of feedback we're giving. And when we talk about feedback, we want it to be effective. And by being effective, it needs to be specific and timely. We want to really walk through what's happening and address it immediately. I've sometimes found that with some staff members, it's easier to walk through giving feedback based on their day. When you come in, I appreciate you say good morning. I find it challenging when you do, et cetera, et cetera. Walking through the day helps avoid people feeling like you're starting off by saying, you do great, but here's all my problems. No, I recognize you as a full employee with a couple opportunities for improvement, and so I kind of want to work through and look at those. If possible, let's try to make our feedback goal-oriented, which means we need to set goals, really clear, manageable goals. One of the pieces I enjoy doing with my staff is something called a 2x2, because I firmly believe that annual reviews are only good for book reports and auditing. They don't actually help an employee grow, because only once a year we're going to tell you how things are. But a 2x2 allows us to focus where we can say, tell me 2 things you're doing really well, 2 areas you'd like to improve, and 2 things you need from me and your support team to be more successful. When we focus and force people to list things and give them a limit, only 2, it forces the employee to tell what really matters. Well, if I only have two things I can tell you, here's really what's most important to me. We need to discover early what the barriers are before they become blocks. And here's the catch, feedback is a complete circle, so we need to be asking for feedback from our employees as well. Consider trying to make it anonymous. I worked with a team once, and every time I met with a team member, I'd pull them in my office, we'd shut the door, have our meeting, then go on with the day. I did my employee check-in, which is my version of the employee feedback survey, had them do it anonymous, ask about what worked, what was challenging, what they'd like to see different. Do you know the majority of my staff said they were uncomfortable with all the closed door meetings? And I laughed out loud. The reason the door is closed is because, ladies and gentlemen, I talk loud, and I didn't want to disturb the rest of my team. But to my team, they perceived that as if I was having all these big, serious meetings, but I was never going back and telling the whole group about stuff. So what must be happening? It's amazing how sometimes things that seem so simple to us can be very misconstrued. So think about creating a space to get some of that rich feedback. And then you need to share what you've heard. Because the worst thing is when we fill out a survey and we think, no one reads this, no one cares. And then I post them and say, here's the feedback, and here's what I'm going to do based on this feedback. That's incredibly important and very, very valuable to the team. And so we want to focus on opportunities. I always try to avoid saying a failing or a mistake, or we focus on the opportunities to improve. And no matter how silly it sounds, it really makes a more positive experience as we discuss growth and feedback. Because an opportunity has a beautiful connotation, and that's what we want to focus on. So as we go through these developmental feedback, there's 4 simple steps we do. The first is I need to state the issue as a statement of fact. Not a question, no opinion, just fact. Turnout was low at this event. And that goes back to saying there's clear expectations and goals. We really want to find measurable ways to outline those goals so then we can hold to a fact. So in that development, the first step we do is simply state the fact. This is where we are struggling. You need to ask for solutions, but make sure you use future-orientated questions like how will you, what will you do, not why. Again, we don't want to go back to blame. Why did this not work? Why will it work better? We want to focus on how and what. And here's my major key point for you as we wrap up right now. You only get answers to questions you ask. You only get answers to questions you ask. Don't assume that anyone's going to tell you anything. Ask it specifically. Then wait after you've asked the question and force a response. For me, a person who likes to talk and engage with people, this is really tough. Just sit quietly. But do not fill the room with talk. Wait for an answer. How will you improve in this event? And wait. And then once we have a deal and we have some ideas, then we set a future time to come back and check in on those and see what's going on and make that connection. And I encourage you to try to give positive reinforcement 3 to 4 times before giving negative. Because negative is what stays with us, right? When we ask in customer service surveys, people are 7 times more likely to share bad experiences than good. Make sure we're sharing positives. So I'm going to take a quick break here before we finish up and see if there's any questions that Arlen has or any that you all have had that you'd like to have answered.
All right, thank you, Rachel. We do have a question here from Carol. She wanted you to go back and repeat for us the 2x2 process so we could get that written down.
Beautiful, wonderful question, Carol. The 2x2 is you want to focus on asking the employee to share 2 things that they're great at, 2 areas they would like to improve, and 2 ways that the company, the organization, yourself, can help them reach their goals. So again, 2 ways, 2 things they're doing great, 2 things you'd like to improve upon, and 2 ways that I can help you do that. And what we've done there, Carol, is we've made sure that we share ownership of their goals. They're not alone on an island. We are in this together.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rachel. We've got it.
Okay, terrific. Well, then as we wrap up, I want to leave you with some thoughts here really quick. One thought is to make sure you have better internet access and wireless than I do. So thank you all again for your tremendous patience this morning. I want you to believe in yourself and be you, authentically who you are. You need to have faith in your team and have faith in you. Today we've discussed a number of potentially new approaches and thoughts to how you can conduct your business in the school and in administration. And my challenge and my best wish to you is to stay the course. It takes 7 to 20 times for people to hear a message and understand it relates to them. 7 to 20 times. You are creating a culture of change. So staying committed to that becomes incredibly important. I often try to think about McDonald's, the March shake that they get, that fun green shake. I don't even really like milkshakes, but McDonald's does such a great job of advertising. I hear about it 7 to 20 times. I'll be honest, in March I'll be having one of those shakes, because you just do. Familiarity breeds confidence. Familiarity breeds confidence. This is our culture. This is what we do each day and every day. This is how we bring out our best. I feel more confident when I can trust that I know what's happening and I can have an expectation of what is going to happen. And trust you. You are here because you have the skill, the passion, the intellect, and the drive to make amazing things happen. Look, you even took time out on a busy August Friday to learn about helping your team be even better. You get it. You are determined, and I know that you will succeed. And I challenge you now to take this pause and recap. Hold true to what makes people go to greatness so often is going to come down to the expectations, the responsibility, and the feedback. What we give them, and how we empower them, and how we hold them accountable to sing their praises and support them as they struggle to find success. We hold that all together, and we really can bring out their absolute best. And again, remember, the number one reason why people quit or why people leave is they don't feel valued. Have your team feel valued, your team will succeed, and they will fight hard for you and for the staff and the students and the school and the district every time. So with that, I want to leave you with another quick quiz. Think right now if you can. Can you name 3 Olympic medal winners? That can't be too hard, let's say with the Olympics just happening. How about 3 Nobel Prize winners? I think I have 2. Let's see. 3 poet laureates. I sometimes ask people, can you even tell me what a poet laureate is? You don't know. You should be Googling that. But don't Google for the answers. Now, can you name 3 people who you've worked with who have mentored you in some way? And 3 teachers that have had a profound effect on your life. Can you feel the difference? Our breathing becomes more regular during these last 2 questions. A smile crosses our face as we think about them. And I would dare say that even now, a few of you are still thinking about one of those people. It's not about the folks on the cover of Time magazine or the Wheaties boxes. They are important. They are cultural leaders. But the real difference makers, the real impact, is a person sitting right next to you. That's the difference maker. And I would challenge you, our mission as strong, effective leaders and managers is to make sure that when these last 2 questions are asked, our staff thinks of us, that we fight hard for them. You have an absolute power to make a positive change in every life you touch, including your own. Great hard work will produce something beautiful, just like the seedling pushing through. That's what we're doing. That's why we're here. That's why we're in education. So I leave you to think about, what message are you sending? What messages are you receiving? And right now, you need to choose to bring out the best in yourself and each of your staff members every day. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure to get to speak with you and learn and grow together. I encourage you to take down my contact information. As you see, I've added texting now. I'm hip, I'm cool. Yeah, just trust me, I am. #truth. So it would be great to speak with you, come to your school, come to your district, work with you all. But I wish you a very, very successful school year, and I thank you again for a great time this morning. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
All right, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing this presentation with us today. Perfectly timed for the start of the school year, and I appreciate you continuing to bring out your best as we deal with the technical issues. I wanted to let everybody in the audience know as well, we will work to make sure we get a clean copy of this recording so that the middle portion there where we had some tech issues will not even be noticeable in the recording. That's going to take us a little more time. But we'll make sure to get that to all of you who attended and anyone who registered as well. I'm going to paste into the chat a link to give us an evaluation. And so for our Illinois attendees, by clicking on this link and completing this evaluation, you will be emailed the ISB Evidence of Completion letter, so you can get 1 hour of professional development credit for attending our webinar today. So make sure to fill that out and give us your feedback and thoughts from today's presentation, and we'll make sure that you get emailed your ISB Evidence of Completion form. If there are any final questions for Rachel or myself, feel free to type them into the questions box, and we will hang out here for the next few minutes to make sure that everybody has everything they need to get back to school. And thanks again, everybody, for attending. I hope you have a great school year, and be looking forward to the next ELN live event next month. Take care.